Hello everyone, so let us check out Biology Half Yearly Class 8 examination paper. Let us move on quickly to the MCQs. So which of the following is a producer? Tree. Which of these do not belong to flora? Frog. It belongs to fauna. Which of the following is not a macronutrient? Zinc. All the rest of them, they are macronutrients. Bread mold reproduces by spore formation. Ovary contains sepals, pistils, seed and petals. It contains seed, right? Pistil is the gynoecium and ovary is a part of the gynoecium, so it cannot contain pistil. An incomplete flower that bears only androecium is called as a staminate flower. Energy is required in which kind of movement? Active transport, because here the concentration gradient is against the natural flow, because the minerals are moving from lower concentration to higher concentration. That is why this kind of a movement, it requires energy. The factor which does not influence transpiration is glucose. Glucose has nothing to do with transpiration as such, the glucose content. Whereas temperature, wind, humidity, all of them affect transpiration in some way or the other. Which of the following is not a part of the phloem tissue? Of course, the tracheids. Asexual reproduction does not occur in rabbit because it is a mammal and mammals show sexual reproduction. Dash is a composite unit of an alga and a fungus. So the answer here is lichen. I do not know what is wrong with my pen, so I'll just stick to answering the questions orally. All right. So dash is a composite unit of alga and fungus. Lichen. Sperms are male gametes. Hydra reproduces by budding. Fruit is a developed ovary, a ripened ovary, a mature ovary. All of them are correct. Translocation occurs in both upward and downward direction. Name the following. The main components of an ecosystem. It is biotic component and abiotic component. One viviparous animal. Any viviparous animal you can name, any mammal you can name. That would be good enough. Whorl of the flower made up of pistils. It is gynoecium. Protective layer which covers the seed. It is the seed coat, or the testa and the tegmen. You can just write seed coat. Tissue which helps in conduction of water in plants. Of course, it is xylem tissue. Explain the following briefly in one sentence. Osmosis. Now in osmosis, you need to remember that it is the movement of water molecules, or rather the solvent molecules, from higher concentration to lower concentration. So if it is not the solvent molecules that you have mentioned, and this movement occurs through a semi-permeable membrane. This osmosis is involved only with the movement of solvent molecules, and since it says explain this very briefly in just one sentence, so you can just simply say it is the movement of solvent molecules from lower concentration to higher concentration. Then diffusion. Now this is the movement of any type of fluid molecules, be it liquid, be it gases, from lower concentration to higher concentration without the involvement of a medium. So no medium is required, no membrane is required. Whereas in osmosis, a semi-permeable membrane acts as a medium. Artificial pollination. Now some have written that artificial pollination is brought about by humans. Now what you are supposed to write is, what do you mean by artificial pollination? So one part, by humans, you have gotten correct, but you have not mentioned what pollination is. So you have to mention that artificial pollination is the transference of the pollen from the stamen to the stigma by human intervention or by humans. Then we come to detritivores. Detritivores are organisms that get their nutrition from dead organic matter. That is how we define detritivores. Now let us talk about the trophic levels. So the trophic level is the level, or it is the stage in any food chain or food web where energy and nutrition is being transferred. So that is what you need to mention when you are talking about the trophic level. I'm sorry, my pen is not working, so I'm unable to write over here. I'm just able to get the cursor, my mouse as a cursor, so I'm unable to write using a mouse. So let us talk about differentiate between the following: calyx and corolla. You can write it does not mention which specific difference you have to write, so you can write any difference. Calyx and corolla, it is the whorl made up of sepals, it is the whorl made up of petals. Macronutrients, micronutrients. Macronutrients are required in less quantity, whereas large quantities, whereas micronutrients are nutrients that are required by plants in smaller quantities. Excuse me. Binary and multiple fission. Now, binary fission is the cell division method in which one cell divides into two daughter cells, whereas in multiple fission, one cell divides into many daughter cells. Cutting and layering. Now, cutting is cutting a part of the stem of a plant and then transplanting it in moist soil. Layering is when you take a part of the stem while it is still attached to the plant and put it under the soil and bury it under the soil, and then inside the soil or under the soil it grows new roots. So that is what layering is. Unisexual and bisexual flowers, as the name itself suggests, a unisexual flower will either have the androecium or the gynoecium in it, whereas in bisexual flowers both the androecium and the gynoecium are present. Now for the next part, it is say true or false. So let me just zoom it in a bit so that you can see it easily. Say true or false and correct the false statements. Food chain always starts with the producer. True, absolutely true. Fertilization is the biological process by which organisms produce offsprings of their own kind. Many of you wrote this is true, whereas this is false. This is not the biological process. The biological process is reproduction. Fertilization is a process that is happening only during sexual reproduction, whereas through reproduction, organisms produce offsprings of their own kind. Pollen grains are female gametes. No, they are male gametes. Fragmentation occurs in bacteria. No, fragmentation occurs in various algae like Spirogyra, or you can also write as this fission, binary fission occurs in bacteria, because it does not specifically mention which part you have to change or correct. Plants release excess proteins through the process of transpiration. No, this is not proteins that they release. They release water vapor. Excess water is released through the process of transpiration in the form of water vapors. Give one function of the following. Phloem parenchyma. Now, phloem parenchyma is responsible for the storage of food. So it stores the food. Nitrogen. Nitrogen, as we all know, it is a macronutrient, so it helps the plants to grow well. Stigma. Stigma is the part of the gynoecium which helps to trap the pollen grains so that they can reach the ovary. Petals. Petals are a whorl of a flower which are usually meant to attract insects or other organisms or other agents for pollination. Producers. Producers are the group of green plants which contain chlorophyll and are responsible for the production of food. So all the nutrition which is present in this world is brought about by the function of the producers. Now this is answer the following questions. What is vegetative propagation? State two advantages of vegetative propagation. Now, when we talk about vegetative propagation, we are talking about the propagation of plants or the multiplication of plants by the use of any part other than the reproductive part, which is the flower. So the stem, the root, the leaves, they are all used for vegetatively propagating a plant. That's why it is called as vegetative propagation, because it is using a vegetative part and not a reproductive part of the plant. State two advantages of vegetative propagation. You can always write that it is very rapid. We have seen how rapidly we can grow new plants using vegetative propagation, very commonly seen in rose cuttings. You simply take rose cuttings and you plant them, and you can find the new plant growing very quickly. Then new varieties, by the process of hybridizing, this grafting, new varieties can be produced, and as well as we can have very identical plants to the parent plant if we desire them. So any two advantages you can write. It is very inexpensive and it does not need much care as far as the normal reproductive process is concerned. So a lot of things take care of themselves naturally as compared to the proper reproductive process. Write two characteristics of animal pollinated flowers. They generally have nectar in them, or they are sweet smelling. They have attractive petals. Those flowers are brightly colored to attract the various animals. What is a food chain? Give two examples of a food chain. When we are talking about a food chain, it is a continuous process of the transference of nutrition and energy through the various trophic levels. So there is a sequence, a proper sequence. So when nutrition and energy is transferred in a sequential order from one organism to another organism, it constitutes a food chain. Give two examples of food chain. Any example you can give. Grass is eaten by the grasshopper is eaten by the frog is eaten by the snake, and so on. Or grass is eaten by deer is eaten by lion, and so on. Any two examples would do. State three differences between producers and consumers. First and foremost, producers are responsible for providing all the nutrition in any ecosystem. Consumers depend on producers for their food. So first difference. Then you can write that producers contain chlorophyll, and as we have already said that they are autotrophic and consumers are heterotrophic. So you can always say that producers are always at the base of any ecological pyramid, whereas consumers, they always constitute one trophic level above the producers. So any of these differences you can give. What is symbiosis? Explain by giving an example. Symbiosis is an association of two or more organisms where they are mutually beneficial to each other. So when we talk about an example, lichens are very good example, where you have an alga and a fungus living together. So the fungus provides the substratum for the alga to grow, whereas the alga, being autotrophic, it will provide nutrition to the fungus. So fungus can derive its nutrition from alga. In case of lichens, mention any two importance of transpiration. First and foremost, it maintains the moisture balance in the environment. It is also responsible for causing rainfall. Then it helps the plant to lose its excess water. Then it helps to keep the plant cool. So there are so many importances of there are so many ways in which you can mention how transpiration is important. Draw a neat and label diagram showing the germination of a bean seed. So it is already given in your textbook, so you can draw from that. What is the role of the following in the working of an ecosystem? Temperature. So temperature is very important because many of the flowers, they open up or they bloom according to the temperature. So some flowers you will find that they will bloom in summertime, some in winter time, or if the weather shifts, then the plants, they show some kind of a different behavior. Some plants are nocturnal plants, and like that, as well as not just the plant but animals as well. Wind, it is responsible for the pollination, the dispersal of the seeds, and so many things are undertaken by the wind. Then sunlight, of course, it is very, very important for the producers, because without the presence of sunlight, producers will not be able to manufacture food, which is the basis of nutrition in the entire ecosystem. So that is how these factors, they play an important role in the smooth functioning of an ecosystem. Define the following terms. Root pressure. This is a pressure which is built up in the roots, which is created in the roots due to the constant inflow of water. So that is how root pressure is defined. Ascent of sap. So when the minerals and the water move along the length of the plants in an upward direction, that is called as the ascent of sap. Ascent means rising, and sap is this fluid or the liquid which contains the water and the minerals. Give 3 special features of root hairs that help in absorption of water from soil. So first and foremost, the root hairs help in increasing the surface area of the root to a great extent, so that a large amount of water can be absorbed. Then these root hairs, they have the surfaces are fully permeable, so they facilitate in more absorption of water. Then these roots contain a high content of minerals in them, so that also facilitates in the absorption of water, so that the sap is much diluted over there, so it keeps passing on the water content or the sap to the neighboring cells. What is tissue culture? Explain briefly. So in tissue culture, it is a method of artificial propagation, artificial vegetative propagation as compared to the natural one. In this, a part of the plant is taken, or rather a tissue from the plant is taken, and then it is grown separately in a nutrient media which has certain plant hormones, so that the cells which are present in the tissue, they start to multiply and grow into kind of a mass of cells, which is called as the callus, the initial structure from which a plantlet later on develops, which resembles a plant with its proper roots and leaves and shoot and all that. So this tissue culture is performed in, or this can only be done in laboratory conditions, because it requires very strict conditions in which the nutrient must be kept in order for the plant to develop into callus. What is forest ecosystem? Name the 3 types of forest and in which parts of India are they found. Forest ecosystem is a very complex ecosystem which contains a variety of animals and plants, and the trees constitute a huge part of this ecosystem. So the 3 types of forest which are commonly found in India are the temperate forest, the tropical forest, and the coniferous forest. So coniferous forest you would find majorly in the Himalayan regions. Then the tropical forests are generally found on the western coast, whereas the deciduous forests, they are generally found on the eastern coast of the evergreen forests that are there. So any of these you can mention. What is pollination? State one difference between cross and self-pollination. So when we are talking about pollination, as I had mentioned earlier, it is a transference of the pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. That process is called as pollination. One difference between cross-pollination and self-pollination: in self-pollination, the pollen grains from the anther are transferred to the flower, to the same flower, or to a flower on the same plant. But in cross pollination, the pollens are transferred from one flower on a plant to another flower on another plant, but they have to be of the same kind or the same species. State three characteristics of insect pollinated flowers. They are brightly colored, they have nectar, they many a times they produce scent, and they have a stigma which is pretty sticky, so that the insects, when they come and sit on the flower, they will leave the pollen behind. Draw neat and label diagram of a complete flower. It is already given in your textbook. Then write two examples of tuber and rhizome. So for tuber you can write potato, sweet potato, artichokes, and for rhizome it's turmeric, then ginger, even banana has a rhizome. So that was that for your half-yearly exam paper. So I hope that your doubts have been clarified related to what answers are the correct answers. Thank you so much for watching.